Hello everybody, I'm John, this is JP Strategic Investments, and today we're talking about Patriot One Technologies and something that I think is coming very soon that is going to be very big for the stock and the company in the near future. I've been really diving into these financials kind of over the past couple of weeks, and I've been able to get some clarification on kind of what exactly some of the buckets in their financials mean as far as the backlog, signed agreements pending, how they allocate some of their costs. And so I kind of have developed a little bit of a better understanding of the financials, kind of given me some better insights into how I might be able to predict some different trends and things like that. And I do plan to do a video kind of about that a little more in depth, probably after their next quarter's results come out. And so we'll kind of talk about maybe some of the trends that we're seeing, some predictions we might be able to make and things like that in a little bit of a later video. But there's one thing that I want to talk about today that's really been kind of bugging me about the financials, and that is the cash position and the cash burn. And it's not quite what you think maybe. So remember, the earnings we just got, right? The earnings we just got were for the quarter that ended in July, right? And in those earnings, right, in that report, bring it up here, we can see their cash position is about $6.3 million, right? This is their cash position right here at the end of 2022, end of fiscal year 2022, or in other words, as of July 31st, 2022. Now, if we look at what their actual cash burn is, if we jump back over to the financials here that I have on the spreadsheet, and we go to their expenses, remember they have non-cash expenses as well, so we can't just look at the overall total expense here of the 6.4 million. We kind of have to look at just the cash expenses, compare that to revenue. That'll give us an actual cash burn number here. So excluding non-cash expenses like amortization, right? All of this stuff right in this section, those are expenses that have to go on the balance sheet as expenses, but they aren't actually cash coming out of the balance sheet to pay, or out of their accounts to pay those expenses. Okay, so excluding those, right, in the last quarter, we had total cash expenses of about 5.4 million. Subtract from that the close to 800,000 that they made in revenue, right? And you're looking at somewhere around 5.4 million, or I'm sorry, 4.4 to 4.5 million in cash burn, okay? So what that means is, if that were to stay relatively constant, right? Let's say in the next quarter, they used roughly the same amount of cash, about $4.5 million in cash or so. That would really leave them with just over 2 million, possibly under 2 million if expenses increased, cash burn increased. You're talking, we could have less than $2 million in cash by the end of the next quarter. That's not even going to get them through the quarter after that. Here's the thing, that next quarter that we're talking about already ended, right? Remember, the earnings we got were for the quarter that ended in July. It's already been August, September, October. That next quarter just ended yesterday, right? Which means if they spent the same amount of cash or even more, currently at this moment, Patriot One is sitting with less than possibly $2 million in cash, right? They're in a very bad cash position right now. The thing is I don't think that's actually the case, okay? And I'm going to go over why here. The first reason, and the first possibility here we have to acknowledge is exactly what I just laid out. Currently, Patriot One is sitting with less than $2 million in cash. They're just procrastinating, they're like hoping that the stock price will increase so that they can, hurry up and then just raise cash, right? To me, I don't see, based on what we've seen from Patriot One, based on what we've seen from Peter and the management team over the last several quarters, I don't see that happening. They were very judicious, very proactive with the way that they set up the base shelf prospectus prior to actually needing to raise money. Then they actually used that base shelf prospectus, obviously earlier than they necessarily absolutely needed to. They've been very good about that, and they've just been very strategic. They're not going to just hope that the stock might go up based on some announcements so that they can raise money and just, bank on that while they're sitting on almost no cash. One of the quotes that I really like is, hope is not a strategy, right? And I think Peter would agree with me there. And so that's why I think more likely what we're looking at is kind of one of two scenarios here, possibly maybe even a combination of both, right? Scenario number one is that Patriot One in the last quarter, the quarter that just ended yesterday, has increased revenue by a significant amount and is therefore significantly decreasing their cash burn. And in turn, at the moment, they could be sitting on a much better cash position than maybe would be reflected by the last quarter's cash burn. That could very well be the case, especially with what we've seen from recent contract announcements, right? We know that based on comments in the earnings call that SAP, TechCU Arena, Angel of the Winds, none of those were included in the backlog, and they also weren't included in the signed agreements pending, right? They weren't included in any of that. All of those contracts were announced early to middle of the quarter, right? Those should probably have already started and potentially finished installation on those contracts, on those venues. And if we look at SAP Arena, right? Here's the announcement right here. SAP is 18,000 seat arena, right? TechCU, another 4,200, right? We know from previous kind of examples that Patriot One has given us in different investor presentations and things like that, you're looking at, generally around, at least at the moment, roughly one lane per 2,000 people. Now that may have decreased as they've improved the technology. Maybe it's one lane per 2,500 people, something like that. But as far as what we have to go off of right now, it seems like, this could potentially be a 10, 12 lane wind right here with just these two arenas. Obviously, we don't know exactly how much revenue that equates to, things like that. But this is a significant contract, right? And this was not included, again, in the backlog, in any of the revenue that they made in the last quarter, even not in the signed agreements pending installation, which, by the way, is another $1.9 million that they're sitting on here, right? These are contracts that are currently, right, this whole line here, and especially just for the last quarter, this is Q4, that 1.9 million are agreements that are signed, contracts that are essentially just pending that trial period, right? Or pending installation, right? Some of these contracts, they've already done the trial, or maybe they've just signed the contract. They didn't even do a trial, but the units just haven't been installed, right? We've got $1.9 million there that could go in. We've got those three arenas or venues that I just talked about, right? SAP, TechCU, Angel of the Winds. And on top of that, we have, the information that we got in the last webinar about Peter saying that they've doubled the amount of installed units in the last month. And I think that was in early to middle of October, right? So, that doesn't even include the first half of August, right? And possibly, however many installations they've done since that webinar, right? So we could be looking at very well a very significant increase in the backlog, in signed agreements pending, and most importantly, in revenue in the next quarter. So that's why I think it's very possible that that could be a scenario here where Patriot One is significantly increasing revenue, therefore, again, decreasing the cash burn, which would allow them to, at this point, continue running. And it's kind of explaining why maybe we haven't seen an announcement that they are raising capital, right? Because if this isn't the case, right, then I think the only other scenario where we wouldn't be seeing already at this point an announcement for raising capital is there already is one in the works. Maybe possibly they've already got one locked in, and it's just all but actually been finalized and announced, right? And I think possibly even arguably the more likely scenario is kind of a combination of the two, right? So just wanted to kind of talk about that, get that out there. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, kind of how you're looking at the cash position, how you're analyzing that, how you think they might be raising money, if you think they might be raising money. Leave those down in the comments below. And again, let me know what you thought of this video. Hit the like, of course, if you liked it. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.